Anyways, my name's Michael. I'm going to be showing you guys around this morning. So right off the bat, welcome to the World Museum of Mining. How do we get our name? When you go back to the heyday of mining here in Butte, we have people from literally all over the world coming to Butte to work. So if you guys could think of a nationality, odds are there was someone from that region coming to Butte to work. So just to preserve everyone's heritage, we named it World Museum of Mining. They said at one time here in Butte, we spoke anywhere from 34 to 50 some odd different languages here. So honestly, I do call us a giant hodgepodge society. Now, this was not always a museum. So back behind us where the town is, that didn't exist back in the day. This was an actual working mine. And the name of this mine is the Orphan Girl Mine because of our claim date and location. Claim date 1875. And at that time, we sit in what we call the outer camps. Sort of kind of sitting by ourselves, they thought of us as an orphan. So they called us the Orphan Girl. As simple as that. Now, we are sort of kind of different than a lot of the mines here in Butte, meaning this is a silver mine here. But we did take lead, zinc, and manganese out of the ground as well. Why do I state it this way? Well, silver really wasn't the thing that made Butte popular back in the day. It was actually our copper. Original claims in Montana go back into the 1850s, about 55 miles up the road from here at a place we call Gold Creek. Type of mining we did? Placer mining, gold panning. We could do that wet or dry. So roughly in the late 1850s, early 1860s, the lower tributaries were originally after gold here because that's what pays the bills back in that time frame. By the time we get into the mid 1860s, we actually pan out. As prospectors, if we're not making money, we leave. So Butte actually goes from a population of roughly 1,500 people down to about 75 people almost overnight. We're on our way becoming one of those ghost towns. Now, while we were panning for gold, we were finding both silver and copper. Does Butte originally have a use for this copper, though, in this time frame? Not really. So what do we do with it? We made pots and pans and Christmas ornaments. That's it. And then when we transition into the 1870s, silver's developing more and more of a value, drawing people back into this region. So it kind of helps save Butte. Now, by the time we get into the late 1870s, 1879, copper gets its use because of a discovery made in a couple of inventions. You guys want to venture a guess what those are?
Inventions?
Uh-huh. Electricity and the telegraph. Bottom line is, copper is an excellent conductor to transport both the electrical and the communication. So that's when copper becomes the moneymaker here and what we want to find. And when we go underground, we find more of it. Excellent. But we're also coming across something we'll call a waste rock now because we're no longer after it. This is gold and silver becomes a waste rock in the mines at this time frame. It actually pays for the daily mine operation. So all the copper that came out of the ground back then was actually pure profit. Are we still mining copper here in Butte? Yeah, they say we still have more than 100 years left of copper in this area to mine. Big difference, we're not going underground for it. We're doing it on the surface, and it's called the Continental Pit Mine, ran by Montana Resources. So depending on how you guys drove in, all the earthwork that's being done over towards the east of us, that's where we're doing that at. Now, our mine, we operated until 1956. That's when we thought we hit the bottom of the ore body. Not making enough money, the company shuts down. They donate the property to Butte Silver Bow County, so that's who actually owns the museum grounds. Concept of the museums actually starts in 1963. So at that time, when you look at our village, we're bringing in a lot of those old buildings. Most of them old storage buildings, outbuildings from people's properties that we convert to a storefront to give you that replica 1890s mining town. We officially become a museum July 18th, 1965. And at this time, town doesn't have a name. They couldn't agree upon a name. So they actually took the easy way out. They put an essay contest out to the town, and a 12-year-old girl wins this essay contest and names our town Hell Roaring Gulch. I'll just say Butte, Montana on that one, guys. So from there, when we start going underground in the late 1870s, do you guys think that would be the safest environment to go into back then?
I've read the history,
No?
no.
Most dangerous?
I don't know about most dangerous, but yeah.
We're up there.
Yeah,
We actually make it to a hole number 3 on the list.
I did the trolley tour here, so they talked about the big accident.
We'll talk about the speculated mine accident inside. So the most dangerous job back then was actually being a logger because they go halfway up tall fir trees. They top them, get knocked off, thrown off, whatever. Either way, not bad. Then putting in the railroad system back then was actually more dangerous. So number 3 on the list, we actually have a memorial garden right over here with roughly 2,500 names on it of people who have died because of Butte mining. Butte, we are known for a couple things. Right off the bat, we are the first town west of the Mississippi to be fully electrified. And we're actually 4 years ahead of New York City in this time frame. Butte's also known to be a mile high and a mile deep. The deepest mine here is the Mountain Con. Mile high in elevation is the bottom part of the valley we call the Flats. With that being said, Butte is also known to have over 10,000 miles of underground workings below us here. A giant honeycomb system. All the mines are interconnected, so if you knew your way around, you could actually enter our mine and exit a different mine later on. Another way of putting down this mileage, just think if you were to get on a plane and go halfway around the circumference of the world. Now, originally these mine workings would have been filled with water, so we pumped the water out of all 10,000 miles until the early 1980s. Why? Another thing Butte's known for. The largest body of contaminated water in the U.S., the Berkeley Pit. Is this actually a bragging right for us? No, not really. Why is it contaminating? Mining copper, specifically copper sulfide. So right now, copper ore underground actually doesn't have water or air hitting it, so water can pass through it, nothing's going to happen. We're going after it, meaning we're blasting. We're introducing water or air into the system. Air, water, and copper sulfide, the reaction's known as acid water. So the pH level in the pit can vary from day to day, time of year from 3.2 to 4.7. And in this case, we do not like the number 1 because neutral for water is actually 7. So when we find our precious metals underground, do you guys think they're ready to be used right off the bat? Nah, because typically it's encased in rock, ore. So we need to learn to process it. So we start using equipment like this red machine over here we call a stamp mill. And the way the stamp mill works is those round pistons, they go up and down, trapping the material between a metal tray on the bottom, turning big rocks into little rocks, ultimately to a very coarse sand. Then we send it to a smelter, a big furnace that we can superheat it up into a liquid, throw in a powdery solution we refer to as a flux. It binds to that precious metal, separating it from a byproduct we call slag. These black, glassy looking bricks right over here. Copper itself, what does it look like for us back in the day? Well, those 2 acorn shapes. Those are roughly 80% copper and weigh somewhere between 500 to 550 pounds. So with that being said, Butte itself, how do we get our name? If I walk you guys over here just a hair, you look over this green roof, you'll see that hill. That hill is called Big Butte. We didn't want to call the town Big Butte, so we're shortening it down to Butte. Butte City originally. Is it a special hill? Yeah, it's a dormant volcano. It's also special because the college next door to us, they have their M up on it, Montana Tech. They light it up every night to brag to Butte saying, hey Butte, we're still here. But the cool thing about the M, we play a sporting event and we win. They will flash the V portion of the M for victory. Now, it's also where we do our 4th of July fireworks from. But here in Butte, we have to be different on this one too because we actually do it on the 3rd of July because of tradition. Originally, the company wants to celebrate with the employees. Employees celebrate with each other, leaving the 4th open as a family day. Now, you remember all the different nationalities I told you guys we have? A lot of them are Irish. They like this makeup because for them, it actually means an extra day of
Drinking.
Right there. And a lot of people don't realize in the mid-19 teens in the U.S., Butte actually has the largest population of Irish immigrants at this time. All right, when we walk into this building here, I want you to notice what we walk past first, and we'll go over to the far side. All right, when you guys first walked into this building, you actually walked through a shower room first. It's not a typical thing. Reason for this, when you're working underground, you could be working into up to 100% humidity. Now, if you're working in one of those copper mines, it's all those contaminants dripping on you all day long. So you could come out of the mine soaking wet and you walk directly into the shower. You take a shower fully clothed to get the contaminants off of you and your clothing. If you don't get it off your clothing, as it dries, that acid water is just going to turn them into rags, simply put. And even following this process, miners were lucky to get 6 months out of their clothes. So it was still very tough on the clothing. Once you took the shower fully clothed, you came into the Nix room. You put your bigger items on the hook, smaller items went in the baskets so they could dry, giving this space the technical name of the miner's dry, a place to dry off after shift. Ultimately, a large locker room that needs to accommodate the workforce. So here, we employed roughly 150 to 175 people, making the space we're standing in is actually a replica. Miners refer to their work clothes as diggers. Because ultimately, what are you doing underground in them? Digging, exactly. Going underground originally here in Butte, you could spend up to 16 hours underground per shift back then. This isn't a big deal because realize in the early 1880s, back then we just worked. It didn't matter what our trade was, we just worked. It was a way of life. Miners did it originally for a whole $1.50 a day back then. And it's actually good pay. It's 3 times higher than the factory workers back east. Unions are trying to get involved here in Butte. Honestly, they don't want them here because they're trying to force us into an 8-hour shift. Our worry is half the time equals half the
Pay.
right there. When we get forced into it, we don't lose any money. Matter of fact, we work extra time on a pay period and get paid that special thing we call
Overtime.
and money makes things better. So between that and other influences, unions take hold here in Butte. When we go to organized shifts, we have to have a way of clocking our miners in and out. So we designed this board right over here that we call a tag in, tag out board. Originally brassing in and brassing out because those silver tags were originally made out of brass. Each one of those tags would have had the miner's name on it or a number specific to that miner. So when you showed up to work, you went from out to in a shift, in to out. As simple as that. Now, if my tag was to stay up there too long and I'm not authorized to work overtime, they would send someone into the workings to find out what's going on. Takes you to the other reasons for these tags. They have 2. They would wear the second one on their work belt as a means of identification in case something goes wrong in the workings. Mines eventually are open 24/7, 365. They don't shut down, which means something else in Butte never shut down back then. The local bars. And back then, the company actually buys the miner their first round. The most common drink is a Boilermaker, a glass of beer and a shot of whiskey. And then Butte was also known to have one of the longest run on one of these into the mid-1980s. And that was the local bordellos. Now, going underground, our first true form of light back then is actually a candle. And when we put it on, it's called a candlestick holder, a rock pick. So you can hang it on your helmet or force it into rock crevices or wood. From there, we utilize a rock we call carbide. It gets a chemical reaction and water's introduced to it. So underground, if you don't want that to happen, they kept their spare containers like this with the lid on them. You want to utilize it, the lid comes off this container here, threads into the bottom of that contraption there we call a carbide lamp. You have a reflector on the front of it, an igniter in the lower corner. The upper half is a water tank, and the very top is a valve system. You open it up, water drips on the carbide. After a while, the reaction's called acetylene gas. You ignite it and you put it up on your forehead, literally giving the miner a blowtorch on their forehead working underground here in Butte. Yeah, what could go wrong with that? One of those lamps is responsible for the worst hard rock mining accidents in North America. June 8th, 1917, speculator mine fire. 165 to 169 people lose their life because of one of these lamps. And we'll talk about it to hear more in the next room. From there, we go to battery packs. You put them on a belt, basically. You can mount it on your left side, right side. That's up to you. Extension cord goes from there, up your back. Light mounts here. Today, we use LEDs. They're a lot lighter, a lot brighter, and last a lot longer. Questions so far? No? All right, let's go ahead and wander into this room then. This is what we actually call the engine room. A lot of people call it the main hoist house, though, because of our hoist drums. We refer to these as actually opposing force drums because of the way they operate. So we have our cable / rope, how it runs off the top of this one here. You can take, yeah, photos are good. The other one actually would have came out the bottom and went through this lower window. So as one's winding in, the other one's unwinding, acting as a counterbalance. Now, this isn't the only cable that goes in and out of our mines. We also have our utilities, power, air, and water. Speculator mine, we're dropping down a new power cable. And the speculator mine's actually hooked up to another mine called the Granite Mountain Mine. So there's 2 mine systems here. But when they drop down this cable, it actually gets wrapped around the cage, separates, exposing the paper. Well, when they go into the mine to try to figure out what they want to do with this, they actually get too close to that paper with the carbide lamp and start the fire. Did all these miners burn to death? No, actually they did not, because they knew this fire was coming, so they barricade themselves in the dead-end mine workings, drifts, and they do such a good job of sealing these spaces off to keep the bat out, they forget about that one important thing they need, breathable air, so they ended up suffocating. Okay, we'll come over to the far side. Now, Butte Silver Bow does have something we call...
Was there a way to let air in without the fire getting in?
They weren't thinking about that. Basically, we were trying to minimize all the risk. And so they just sealed it up, shut the lights off, and living kind of in darkness. Now, Butte Silver Bow does have something we call the Granite Mountain Memorial. And it goes in a far bigger depth than what I just did. Meaning names and nationalities miners, letters, stories, speaker boxes. They did a very nice job setting this up, and it's not a sales pitch because it's actually free. And we do encourage people to visit that because it's kind of humbling. Now, when you get up to about where I'm at here, I want you to notice this blue sign over here. It says Code of Mine Signals. Signal bells, station bells. Basically, that's miners' Morse code. That's what we use to communicate from the deepest part of the mine all the way back up to the surface. Now, miners, when they ring the bells, they ring them so fast, it sounds like one constant sound. So it's very important not to speak to the hoist operator, because if he misses a bell by 1 and we want to go home, we're not going to be happy. So now you go into the unofficial set of bells in mining. These are in swear words that got passed back and forth between the hoist operator and the miner. I kind of questioned the miner's mentality back then, because why do you want to make this guy mad? He's the one yanking you 4,000 or 5,000 feet up out of the ground. Going underground originally, a pickaxe and a shovel. You bust up the rock, shovel inside of a bucket to clean up the mine. We refer to this as mucking up the mine, and we still use that same terminology today. From there, they discover if they get something inside of a hole, they can actually get an explosion. So they design what's on this whiteboard over here by the door that we call hand tool steel drilling. Flat bars are called tool steels. A hammer is called a jack. We have a single jack or a double jack, meaning one person or 2 people doing this operation. So you hold the tool still in the direction you want to drill. You smack it, quarter turn, smack, quarter turn, until you get the depth of the hole you want. The reason why you quarter turn it each time, it prevents that tool still from sticking, and it also promotes a round hole. Why is a round hole important for the miners? Dynamite. From there, we get to what you see on this wall here we call rock drills. They're a rotary hammer that we're running on compressed air, so they spin and hit like a jackhammer at the same time. Miners really love these things because what took you all day to do by hand, they can now do it in 10 minutes or less. But it comes at a cost. First, they are heavy, so it took multiple miners to move them around. 2, they're loud, so the miners were notoriously death. 3, in the center of the drill bits, we actually have a hole. So we're blowing air into that hole to blow all the dirt out so it doesn't get plugged up. So all that's going into the miner's face. So they're having vision issues. So the first form of safety equipment underground is safety glasses. Then last, the original drills produced a lot of dust that I'm sitting there talking to you guys about. They refer to this as silicosis, also known as miner's consumption, black lung disease. What is silicosis simplified? Just think if you were to take a sheet of glass and turn it into dust. That's sort of kind of what they're breathing all day long. Being sharp edged, when they inhale it, it gets stuck. It starts doing damage. Eventually enough, boom, boom, out goes the lights. How many people died because of silicosis?
I don't know that they know because.
Yeah, they don't. It's unknown. Because originally, this is not considered mine related. So no records were kept of it. The way they get around silicosis in mining, they introduce water to the drilling process. So as you're drilling that hole, it's just a bunch of dirty water coming out and getting rid of all that dust. Same process that's used today. From there, you get into my favorite part of mining, making something go boom, the blasting. It's actually a lot of fun. But you have to remember, originally in this time frame, we don't all speak the same language. So what did we use to communicate to keep things moving forward on the mine yards?
To keep things what?
Moving forward safely on the mine yards.
Safely.
So two things. Key thing, the bell system. And the other thing, slang. One of the slang words here in Butte is actually, how's she going? Out on the town is a general term. How's your family? How was dinner? How's your trip? Whatever. You could get an answer back of, good and you? Good and you? Chat yet? Did you eat yet? On a mine yard, if someone asks you, how's she going? And you got a response of tap or light, that meant we had holes drilled and we're ready to set the charges. So you start off with a stick of dynamite. You gently set it in the hole. Take a wooden dowel, a wooden broomstick, because wood does not produce a spark. True definition for tap or light? Well, when dynamite sweats, that is called nitroglycerin. So in the movies where you see someone do this on a stick of dynamite, they flick it on the ground, it goes poof, that's real. That's not made up. That's why we tap our light. Now, once we have the charges set, we bring all the fuses in the one. The one goes over that plunger. You just don't walk up to it, pull it up, and send it home. You yell, fire in the hole 3 times to make sure everybody gets to a safe location. This is typically done at shift change to minimize the people in the mine. So yeah, there's still people underground when we set the charges off. Why? This is how solid the rock is here. Back then, per charge, they were happy to average 5 feet across, 5 feet high, and 5 feet deep. That would yield them 10,000 pounds of material. Questions so far in here, guys? No? Now, after the tour, this building's going to be open. We do encourage you to come back in here because obviously there's a lot of stuff to see in here. All right, come over to the side door. Now today, do we use dynamite while we're mining underground? No. The blasting material we use is actually called ANFO, ammonia nitrate. Said this big structure here originally is called a gallows frame because it reminds people of a hangman's gallows. But because of all the different nationalities we have, it always came out gallows frame. Then eventually it picks up the name head frame. Operation actually starts inside of our engine room. From there, the cables go up to the very top, go over wheels we call shivs. Now they drop into the mine workings via 2 different types of cages. The first cage is the one on the right that we call the chippy. The chippy is how they got in and out of the mines via ground level. So back in the day, this is how the miners got in and out of the mines, is underneath the gallows frame. Entrance of a mine is called the collar. Is this the true purpose of a gallows frame? Nah, I sort of kind of bring it on to a little bit of laziness. Because when you look over to the left, you see that red ore car? That is a 1-ton ore car that we manually load up back in the day. Do you want to spend that same kind of effort to empty it? Or would you rather be able to dump it and let Mother Nature, gravity, do that work for you? Yeah, we learned to love gravity here in Butte. So that comes up on a cage we call the skip. Now, it doesn't stop here. It goes up to a house like that we call the or house. So here at this mine, our miners would push it off that skiff, dump it into some big funnels we refer to as grizzlies. Gravity takes the material downhill to the rail car system. And in the end, these rail cars are lined up for miles to go to the local smelters. And they were located in Great Falls and Anaconda because of water. You need a lot of water for the smelting process, the cooling process. So the Anaconda Company builds the dams in southwest Montana for that. Now, this gallows frame itself, a couple things are very unique about it. First, this isn't its first home. It came from another mine we call the Colorado. So when they moved it here, they actually fully disassembled this gallows frame and reassembled it here. That work was done by shipbuilders. We contracted shipbuilders to build our gallows frames back then. Then in 1939, we had this over here that we called the outside chippy hoist. We added it to help increase production. So with that, we're also hooked up to another mine here that's owned by the college. It's our sibling mine, and we're going to be creative to name the sibling. We're simply going to call it the orphan.
Girl.
No, we're the girl. That's the boy.
Boy.
Orphan boy. Exactly. All right, we'll head on over this direction. Now, back behind me, you're going to see that wooden structure. That is called a horsewhim. And the way a horsewhim works is your cable comes up out of the ground, goes over a pulley up on top, goes down to a pulley at ground level, then over to that winch that you see. On top of that winch is a board that you can hook up to a horse, mule, or donkey. So as it walks one direction or another, it will pull the bucket in and out of the mines for you. As simple as that. Going underground here in Butte, well, back then you'd spend your day underground, so you brought your lunches with you. The most common meal is the pasty. Flat pie crust. Put meat and potatoes on the half of it, fold it over, seal it, bake it. Why do you want pie crust in mining? Well, when you're working underground, you have completely clean hands, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, not. It gives you a place to hold your meal, keeping the contaminants on the pie crust, not in you. And a shift, whatever fits inside your lunchbox, you're actually allowed to take home. This happens in such a low volume, the company does not care. So yeah, fuses, dynamite, precious rock would disappear. But the most common thing that disappear from the Butte mines is actually small pieces of water pipe. They would steal it, take it home to plumb their homes at the company's expense. Questions so far?
Putting that in what?
Their lunch boxes. Any other questions so far? So once we get over the railroad tracks, we'll walk up to this piece of equipment here, that horizontal drum. Here comes your guy. All right.
I'm ready to work. I'm hard at it. Let's go.
Sounds pretty energetic from what you told me earlier.
No, that was the other one.
That was other. But anyways, this here is what we call a windlass. And the way the windlass works is your cable comes up out of the ground, wraps around this drum a couple times to give it a good grip, a good bite. But what really makes it special is this bar here. This acts as a doubler. So if you can pick up 20 pounds, with this, you can now pick up 40. So now I have two people working the mines, one on the surface, one underground. So it kind of helps produce, doubles the production once again. All right, we'll head on over towards this green John Deere. Progression going underground. They say a human can roughly pick up a bucket about 15 feet hand over fist. So have you ever heard the term making money hand over fist? Yeah. There you go. Windlass is good for 75 feet, documented all the way up to 150. Horsewhims, 500 feet. Then when we get into the 1890s, we get our first steel gallows frame. And by the time we're done using them in the mid 1970s, we're getting 4,800 feet straight down. Teens, when you looked around us, all the pine trees and stuff that you see, they didn't exist. Didn't matter if you went towards Helena, Missoula, Dillon, or Bozeman, because they're using that for mine cribbing. They're building homes, businesses, bridges, and wagons. So the first type of cribbing I'll show you when we go underground is what we learn to utilize. Over my left shoulder, you're going to see a brick structure. That's the boiler for the mine yard. The heater. So any building like the Dryad needs to be heated in the winter, that's where it came from. Now, with that being said, Butte, we're known for three individuals we call the Copper Kings. Can I give you an honest, accurate description in a few words? Not even close. The fastest way I've learned to say it is think about 3 siblings. Do they always get along? No. Now let's throw a bucket of money in front of them and see what happens. Their names, Clark, Daly, and Hines. And you hear more about Clark and Daly because they're the more aggressive ones, doing everything they can to become number 1. Now, in this time frame, we have new rules, laws, and regulations coming into play. So how could they get those to go in their favor back then? They bribed their local politicians. So now you guys know how far back it truly goes. Also in this time frame, Montana is going to go from a territory to a state, meaning we're going to change the capital a few times. Does anybody here know the original territory capital of Montana?
Virginia City.
It's
Bannock.
There we go, Bannock. Bannock is a designated capital for a couple of years. Then later on, Bannock, correct. And then later on, Virginia City's voted in. Now, when we're politicking to get our new capital, Daly actually wants his hometown of Anaconda. Clark, he wants Helena. After all the money spent in politicking is done, yeah, Helena does win. Lots of stories go along with that one as well, though, guys.
So, but like back then, the population of Bannock was like larger than than Virginia City and
Yeah, they were just following because we did kind of a circle because you went from here, Gold Creek, then Helena, Bannock, Virginia City. So we're kind of doing a circle, just chasing the money, so to speak.
So the population rose.
And fell.
Okay.
Now, Butte Silverbow,
Very small.
yeah, we get a cool consolation prize out of this. Meaning we get the #1 prefix on our license plate due to politics and population. Because Butte was actually in this time frame the largest town in Montana. Okay, I'll just get you guys on the right side.
My sweetheart's a mule in the mine. I drive her with only one line. On the backboard I sit, tobacco I spit all over my sweetheart's behind.